What's up, Digital Business Evolution? Welcome back to the show. We have such a special guest here today. I know I say that every single time, but this woman, ooh, I'm going to cry. I wasn't expecting that. It's not really a shocker, but this woman truly changed my life. She really was such a catapult to everything that you see today, whether it was the digital business or competing in fitness, thinking that I could be an entrepreneur. All of these different elements played into really two things that this woman said to me back in, I think, 2013. So oh man, here we are. Miss Cathy Savage, an internationally recognized digital fitness and brand media strategist located in Boston. She's been featured on MTV, ABC News, and Fox News. She's also been a member of the advisory panel and a contributor for Oxygen Magazine and Strong Magazine, honestly, for as long as I can remember. Since the early 90s, Cathy's been the pioneer in successful coaching and consulting for women all over the world. Let's just say that again, from the early 90s. Her coaching programs were the first and most prominent all-inclusive digital global training programs of its kind. Oh man, I met Cathy in 2013. I think I first heard about you in 2012 through a mutual friend who was a client. And it's been just a decade of so many pivots, so many revelations, and so much power and integrity and just love and support. And so Cathy, it's such a pleasure and honor to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Oh, Jess, it's such a pleasure to be here. Hello, everybody. The pleasure is all mine.
I love it. I love it. So, looking at your bio, reading your bio, looking at all the accolades and awards, the businesses and brands that you've helped build over the years, it's really easy to say, well, she's different. She's got something different. You've been doing it for so long. Or the one that I love most, like you got in early, like you were lucky, right? Can you take us back though? And I know I've heard your story many times, but take us back to sort of how this started, because you've been online since online really was a thing. I mean, how were you first introduced to that? And how did you think back then, oh, this is something I can step into, when you really were a pioneer and no one else was doing it?
Yeah, thanks, Jess. It really, the early days were what I like to call the wild, wild west. There was no playbook, there was no structure, there was no system. It was just a new thing. And so when I started to create something online, I had already had something substantial in person. So I think what's great about when I started doing fitness, I've done it both ways, both from belly to belly and in person to using digital assets. And what's really great is when people say, oh, it's so hard now. It's not as hard as it was when you had to fly to shows and fly to magazines and fly to, there was so much sweat equity, far more back then than there is now. Yeah. But, to start, it was one of those things where I'll never forget it. It was Yahoo Groups. Oh my God, I'm so aging myself. Yahoo Groups. And I started a Yahoo group and I started participating in the online forum of Oxygen Magazine.
Wow.
And Oxygen asked me to just go in there and administrate it and answer questions. That became so much of a responsibility. But that's kind of how everything started in the online space for me. And without a playbook, I kept learning. I kept not Googling. I don't even know if Google was a thing, but I just kept trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah. Did you have a mentor?
No, no, I didn't. And it's kind of funny because I felt like an island. I felt like I was doing this on my own. And no one could tell me otherwise. So I think if someone even appeared as a mentor, I probably would have said, but you don't understand. But what I did have, Jess, is a lot of naysayers.
Yeah.
A lot of people said, well, you can't do that. You can't have a team of narcissistic women who want to have the best body. You can't. So kind of had the anti-mentor. But what happened was it only fueled my fire to say, I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to figure it out. And
was this always the plan? Were you always like setting out to build a fitness empire or be a coach? I mean, what did you go to school for initially?
Communications and marketing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no, I did not set out to do that. But what I wanted to be a broadcaster. But what I found was that through working with athletic coaches and being an athlete and all of the above, I started really implementing the principles of professional coaching from a sporting perspective,
Yeah.
and learned from those people. So I guess, Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, the basketball coach of Duke, he's my mentor. Never met, actually, I did meet him once, but I kind of pulled from athletic coaches because at the time there were no coaches. There were some trainers walking around, but they weren't coaches. So I want to say it was this massive plan to do what I did. And it wasn't. I just kept going like a snowball rolling down a mountain. It just got bigger and bigger. And I just figured it out.
Yeah. Oh, it's so incredible. There's so many things that I see you do in fitness coaching, and I want to kind of tie our stories together for the audience, but things that you do in fitness coaching that I also see you do in business. And when I look at how long you've been doing all of this, quite frankly, 30 years or so, there's no wonder that you've had such long staying power. So I want to dive into that today, but I also want to just take the listeners back for a second. I said before that I had found you in about 2012, 2013 through a mutual friend. She was competing with you. I had gone to college with her. And all of a sudden, I'm 6, 7 years post-college. I see on Facebook, she's posting all these pictures of fitness competitions, of course, winning them with like the beautiful sparkly bikini and the clear stripper heels. And I had watched those shows on ESPN as a kid. And I knew as a kid, a gymnast, that I wanted to do those shows one day, but I just forgot about it. I went on with my life. I didn't even know where to search for them anymore. And so it was the first time that I had seen them again. So I reached out to her, shout out to Stacy. I said, what are you doing? Connect me to this person, connect me to this team. I saw her always posting pictures of girls wearing shirts that said savage or, savage girl. And I'm like, what is a savage girl? How do I become a savage girl? So she connected me with you and I joined your team. And immediately it was so much more than macros. It had nothing to do with my food. It had nothing to do with my workouts. And what you used to tell us all the time was, this is not a sorority of suffering. I will not allow complaining. I will not allow gossip, backtalk. I will not allow you girls to be complaining about the journey that you're on. And the journey that we were all on was to step on stage, right? To compete in fitness, bikini, or figure, or whatever that was going to be. And so from the first day that I met you, it was like, whoa, okay, this is different. I didn't have that. I didn't do a sorority in college. I'd stopped sports in college and I was missing those women in my life. But it was truly one of the first times in my adult life that I found a group of women that didn't want to tear each other down. What do you think that you bred into those women? How did you coach everyone so that we didn't do that? Because it really didn't happen. We were competing against each other and we would be the first ones to high five each other.
Yeah. Thank you for that, by the way. And this is why I love you, because you remember so many things that were instrumental for personal development, because I feel like our team was a personal development course in and of itself. And I made no bones about it. I used to really take the emphasis off the trophy. And you said it best. I really wanted women to get nostalgic when they became a part of the group, nostalgic for those times in college, whether they played a sport or not, or they danced, or they had a group of friends that they don't get to see each other. And the whole idea behind that was to, again, going back to learning from athletic coaches, sports coaches, and seeing the absolute need for unity and team and how everybody achieves together. So the emphasis no longer is on me, but on each other. And again, The Gold Standard by Mike Krzyzewski is one of my greatest books. I'm sure Mike knows about it, but it's all about how to take a bunch of egos, which not that you had egos, but women who looked amazing and were beautiful, and immersing them into a unit of one. And when that happens, you're all supporting each other. If you win and someone next to you didn't, she has a part of that win because she was there with you practicing, so that everybody comes across and comes away with a positive experience, regardless of the outcome. And so that was just kind of the mantra, the manifesto that I really wanted. I was far more interested in the beauty of relationships and the way you all behaved and your character on stage, and you were equally happy for someone who just maybe placed ahead of you because you felt like you were a part of it. And in an otherwise very individual sport, I wanted to bring that team concept because, like you, I missed those days. So it was the nostalgia that I really was happier about than the actual wins. And you guys won all the time, so it was a win-win. But what I love is even looking at you now and seeing what you've created and what so many of the other girls created. That just, I feel like an old grandma on the porch, like rocking back and forth. But it really makes me happy to see people who kind of got their start there and took the valuable lessons and made something out of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, things that you might not even know, and I may have shared over the years, but you were the first microphone that I had ever spoken on. We were doing something together and you called me up to the front and you handed me the microphone. And it was the first time I had spoken into a microphone. And there was a point where we had a Facebook group, and whatever I had posted or said, you just commented underneath, like laissez-faire, you said leader alert. And it was just one of those things that stuck with me for a decade, where whether or not you said that to every girl, it didn't matter. You said leader alert. And coming from you, who wasn't my mom, I was really taken back by it. And it was like, wow, somebody sees me as a leader. And it was almost permission to lead. It was almost that validation I needed to, it's okay to go first. It's okay to make mistakes. So yeah, I just wanted to
oh, I remember that. You had Uggs on, you had Uggs, and you had part of your hair up in a pony. Like, these are the things. If you ask me something major in the world that happened yesterday, I can't tell you. But I remember moments like you just described. I remember you on the mic. I remember doing, like, I literally remember you had Uggs on and you had like a little ponytail, long hair with a little ponytail in the front. Like, I remember those things. And I'd love to say I remember everything and everybody, but I don't, obviously. Yeah. I mean, I would be a robot if I was able to calculate and recalculate every moment. But there are moments like that stand out, which is why you were a standout for me. So, that I absolutely meant it. And boy, I had a crystal ball, because look at you now.
Oh, okay. So tell me something that you do when you come in with like brand strategy and business building, because I know you bring this into business as well. You create safe containers really well. And so your studio that you used to have in Norwood, Massachusetts, where my husband is from, that was another thing. When I first drove to your studio, I'm like, wait a minute, this is where the guy I'm dating lives. This is crazy. And I guess his dad went to the high school that your dad was a superintendent of at the time. Just such a small world. So I used to drive 3.5 hours to go to these Sunday sessions where we would do workouts together, because it was that empowering to be in the room. And it was that much of a safe container where I didn't feel judged for walking around with a gallon water, and plastic bags of cold food. How do you create safety inside of your coaching programs?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, unlike a lot of containers that we create now, sometimes you don't have sometimes you have more control of who you allow in that container. When someone does a program with you, some of your programs, not all, but like there's an application process. So you can kind of see if there's a good fit. So a lot of business programs do that. And I love that. Back then, it wasn't really that. So we had someone like you who had athletic experience, was really healthy and wanted to get healthier and had that athletic drive. But you'd be standing next to someone who had never put on a pair of sneakers or had never been on a team. And I think, honestly, the reason why that, and it's a lot more difficult back then than you and I both have now, where we can really fine tune people who are good for a certain program. But back then, it kind of happened organically. And I don't want to take credit for that, because the atmosphere was, I gave the power over to all of you, whether you knew it or not. And all I did was emphasize team. And so what would organically happen is, if you saw somebody struggling, you would pick them up. And so people who may not feel 100% worthy, I hate to use that word, of being there when they walked in the studio, immediately knew what the standard and the culture was. I know Lori Harder used to always say that, like, you, Cathy, you hold people to a standard. Yeah. And that standard was, everyone is welcome. Everyone is a unit. And together we can row together in the right direction, and everybody wins. Yeah. And so I think taking the emphasis off of me being the star I always like to say I'm Steven Spielberg. I'm behind the camera and letting it all just organically happen in the way that these women are going to make it happen.
Yeah.
That's what was so beautiful about it. It wasn't a strategy. It just happened organically when women were in a situation where everyone was welcome.
Yeah. Do you have any pointers, 1 tip, 3 tips for someone who's listening who is maybe still challenged with some ego? Because I know as a leader, as a coach, as someone who runs businesses, I even went through this myself, where how do you sometimes navigate knowing you helped someone, but then maybe they don't give you credit, or they don't really fully thank you, or you don't feel as though maybe they appreciate you. And there is a level of ego that comes up where you could even have a chip on your shoulder as a business owner, carrying that around, or that resentment. So are there a couple things that you could tell a listener how to navigate? It's not the Cathy show. It was the team show. So what does that look like?
Well, that's a really good point. And I will be so honest here. There are times when I'm like, wait a minute. You didn't say that. I did. And I'm cool with you doing it, but wait a minute. And I do it kind of all in fun. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I don't even think that's ego. I think that's pride, which can be a little ego driven. But I think when you mature, and I certainly have matured, I care less about that. And again, I'm the grandma on the porch, just being so happy that people are like doing what they do. But here's what matters. And then I want to get to ego too, because there's a really great thing that young aspiring business builders can kind of take home with. But the good ones never forget where they came from. Like the good, I just got to say it, no matter whether it's your fitness containers or fitness, the good ones remember. And it's not about validating myself or you or someone like that. It's about telling the story so that others can see that you were a part of paving the way, and that their future customers can do the same. Yeah. So I think it's really important for people to remember where they came from, so their story is more realistic for their future customers or their future clients. And that's, to me, is like the reason why we want to make sure that we give credit where credit is due for people. Yeah. But when it comes to ego and being a business owner, it's so funny. I just talked to someone about this this morning. And I think when we make it about ourselves, that's where the ego just becomes larger than life. Yeah. And if we remember who we're serving and what we can actually do to pivot someone's life, and you've done it beautifully, I see it all the time, that's really where a business builder needs to stay. It really does. It needs to stay in the service of others. And that kind of sounds old school, but I have had so many situations where when I forget about myself and I go into that service mode, whether it's fitness or business or anything, parenthood, things just happen for the best. Yeah. So when I remove it's all about me and I just let it organically happen, beautiful things happen. Yeah. And I know that's hard when you're new, because you have to really, maybe you're struggling to make money doing this, but when you are in full service mode and your brand is right and everything, your foundation is intact, it just works. Yeah. It just does. You see that too. You know that. That's why you spend so much time with your clients on that. Yeah. We say serve, don't sell, give, don't get, purpose, not popularity, right? So right. I love this reframe that you have, though, around call it the validation, or giving the story, giving the full story. Because I know when I share my story, when I share kind of the whole story, I do always go back to not necessarily, and Cathy Savage did this. I do always quote you, but it's, back in 2014, I was given an opportunity because you saw something which was really cool. You saw a lot of the girls on the team started to sort of build their brands, build their businesses. And you were like, well, I've been doing this for over a decade. I can help you. And so without a mentor, without someone paving the way, you put out an offer for us. And it was the first business mentorship program that I had taken. All the while, like, I'm still a full-time teacher. I'm a part-time personal trainer. So it was Christmas time of 2014. We were paying to get in for 2015, and I didn't have the money. So I borrowed $1,500 from my parents. It was actually, I think, partially a Hanukkah gift, partially I borrowed it. I'm not sure that I ever paid them back. But I remember I've actually gone back to read the emails, because I've shared clips of the emails on social media
now, where I was asking you and your team, like, can my dad put it on his credit card, but my login be under my name? And I remember how much you like extended the offer and extended the help so that we could make it happen. But it was 2015 that, we jumped into this business mentorship together, and you started to talk about brand. And it was like, branding is the most important thing. And we worked on brand and your vision and your mission and your values and your logo and all these things about brand. And you were really the woman that said, it's a choice to curse. You don't have to curse in your branding. And I immediately was like, oh yeah, I don't need to do that because it just isn't part of my brand. Why is brand so important, and how has it carried you through the years, and how has your brand shifted and evolved at all?
Wow, you ask really good questions, Jess.
Thank you.
Like, I'm sitting here going, Cathy, like, get out of your I'm so proud of her stage and actually listen to the questions so you can answer. Branding is everything. Yeah. It's the way you communicate your value to others, period. That's what it is. It's the way you communicate your value. And so, and you talk about this a lot when you speak about branding. To me, the reason why people who were in our fitness community won was because they were unique. They stood out. They didn't try to be like somebody else. They created their own essence. There wasn't a cookie cutter way to prepare someone for an event. And you can remember that back then, yeah, I loved when they won the trophy, but I was more interested in getting a cover for them or a feature for them. And I acted as if I was the manager. So, which I mean, signing contracts for people, and I didn't even know what I was doing, but, pretending I'm a lawyer or something. But, it was all about the deals and the opportunities. And those were based from not trying to be like somebody else, but how do I pull the uniqueness out of this individual so that she can stand out on stage? Or how can we go up to the publisher of Oxygen at a large expo, and how do I pull her uniqueness out of in 2 minutes so this person can see who she really is? I've always felt that way. I've always run everything that way. I wanted people to be so unique. And that's what I love about branding is it is you. It is your vision, your value, your mission. And it's not something that someone can give to you. You have to do the work and go deep into those 3 elements to find your identity. And that's different for everybody. And, I think it evens the playing field when you look at branding that way, because you don't have to be Jess and you don't have to be Cathy. You can be yourself. You can be loud, quiet, reserved, comical, whatever is your zone. That is your brand. It's the way you communicate your value, not how valuable you are. But yeah. And I think if we all kind of stay there with our foundation, we can really do some deep dive work on our own vision of what we really expect from ourselves and from the ideal client.
It's such a big topic, though. People ask, what's your vision? What's your mission? And it's paralyzing. It really is. So do you have an exercise that you can kind of maybe walk us through quickly? How do you start to navigate, what is my brand? How do I know what my expertise is? What makes me unique and different?
Right. Yeah, I do. And I always go back to Disney, Walt Disney, and Disney World. That is probably the best reference to understanding your vision and your mission and your value. Because if you look at Disney World, and I go through this exercise with my clients, I say, when you go through the turnstiles, watch, look. And, if you don't go to Disney World, maybe it's a little harder to grasp, but that is the ultimate brand story. Because when you first walk into Disney World, the first thing you see is Walt Disney, a statue of him. And it's choreographed in a way that you are immersed on Main Street in his vision. If you look up the buildings, everything is part of his story, not your story, not the ideal customer, his story. And so when we think this way, if we're pretending we're walking through Main Street, purposely not being able to go left or right, we have to go straight to the kingdom, which is the quintessential vision and mission and value of him. We are immersed into his vision. And so then you can go left, then you can go right, but you have to go through his vision first. And that's all strategic. Disney did that purposely. And we can learn from that because all too often people think it's this overwhelming task because they're trying to think of attracting customers. But if we stay within the Walt Disney version of our vision, what do we see? How do you want this business to run? What does someone expect from you? What are they going to get from you? Those are questions that you can answer before you even decide what your offer is. In fact, it'll help you define your offer when you really go through the steps. And just a lot of people don't do this. They don't do foundational branding. And it surprises me. So for my business, that's all I do. I really focus on the foundation of their brand. And then whatever they want to do with it, they can build whatever they want, but their foundation needs to be really a process and an experience of what they see for themselves, why them, and what makes them want to do this so badly.
Yeah.
So we go through those parameters, and your listeners can too. Your vision, your mission, why you, what gets you up at, like, kind of your why.
Sure.
And the value is why you, because I don't want women to suffer in silence anymore. They can do this. It's going through that before you even decide what your offer is.
Yeah.
And that alleviates the overwhelm because it's so unique to you. There's no wrong answers.
Yeah. And this directly translates to social media too. It's not just about content or what you're actually saying. When we hear the word communication, it doesn't necessarily mean the words that you're typing or the words that you're speaking. If you're creating a reel, it's that whole experience of when someone lands on your page, or if you're doing stories, or do you have a text message list, and how often do you show up, and what can they expect to see and hear? And I don't want to use the word think, because I don't think I know. People often confuse branding with logo colors, right? Logo colors, typography. And that's a very small piece, probably arguably not as important as the deeper stuff, which, like you said, most people run away from because it's so scary. It's so big to look at. So I love how you just broke that down. We were at an event this past weekend, and I don't remember who said it, and I feel terrible, but they were talking about the power of personal branding, and how when you sort of lock down the personal brand, think of, it doesn't matter if you like them or you don't, but think of like one of the Jenners. When you lock down the personal brand, Gary V, they spent years, a decade building this personal brand, and then decided to sell something. And what happened? It sells out right away. Right.
Exactly.
But it's all those years of trust, credibility, authority, expectation, values, all those different things. So I'm a huge advocate for building personal brand, for sure.
Oh my God. I can't. And you know what happens too, and you've probably seen this with former students, if they don't do that work, you, Jess, as part of their business journey, you can give them every single step. But if they don't take that responsibility on, and then they realize, wait, this isn't selling. It's not selling because it's not you. And you can't be a salesperson unless you're like this amazing salesperson, but you can't sell your programs unless you have this burning desire and commitment behind it. No one can tell me my programs don't work. No one. You know why? Because I make them so that they do work. But that's me. Everyone has to say that about their own program. I'm not talking about clients coming in to work with me. I'm talking about me as a fellow entrepreneur. If you don't, and you know this is why you are so good at promoting your own programs, because you can stand behind them.
Right.
And I think when people get overwhelmed and they're like, oh, but I don't know if people will like this, or what will they say? That's when I know they haven't done that foundational work. Because when you go deep into the process and you do this, I see the way you put together your programming. You're you're not like a teacher, you were a teacher. But when you go through those steps and you can stand behind every part of your programming because it's you, there is no overwhelm. It's you. There's no competition. You. So there's a lot of that pre-work before you go into really designing the business of your dreams, that you just have to be okay with knowing exactly what those elements are.
It's interesting. There's a blurry line, because I say, if you're not confident in selling, they're not confident in buying. No one's going to whip their credit card out if you don't even have to talk about the thing you're selling. But I feel that it can get blurry. So let's clear it up for someone who's listening right now, saying, I know, but I've always been told to create an offer for what they want, not what I want. So if you're staying true to your brand and you're in integrity and you're not getting blinded by shiny objects, which is so hard, right? Or comparing yourself to other people on social media, how do you make sure that what you're building is you and actually solving the problem that they want.
Right. It's a deep dive and it's layered. Everything has a layer. And so if you are really in that ideal client mode, but you don't even know your capability, then you're not speaking to that person out of integrity. And maybe you're a great actress online and you can promote, because there are, but if you asked me right now to sell a cookbook, Jess, I couldn't do it. You know why? Because I don't cook. and and everyone who knows me would be like, you don't use that cookbook. I couldn't do it. And so if I did that as my first thing, because maybe cookbooks are selling online and I tried and I failed, I would think that I'm a failure. No, it's because it's really not in alignment with who you even are and your actual brand. People know I don't cook a lot. So if I do, it's a huge thing. So staying in, again, going to your zone of genius. And how do we get to our zone of genius? We go through our vision, our values, and our vision, our mission, and our values. And this is why I can be friends with people who do what I do. I'm not in competition with anyone because I do it differently, not better. I just do it differently. I do a different segment of a business build. I don't do the full build. I do the branding, the pre-work.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like I'm in competition with anybody because we all have our own different ways. So the shiny penny thing, I never understood that, but I think that's because I'm so sure of what my vision is.
Yeah.
And I think there's, again, I hate to go back to that. It's either up or down, yes or no, black or white. I remember I would pull that out to you. Like there are no grays when it's your brand.
Yeah.
And you should always want to align with people who feel the same way about business that you do without worrying if someone's going to take that away. And I'll admit, when I was in fitness, I probably did have those emotions here and there, but just being a mature person now, more mature than I was, I see it for its beauty and it makes me better. So, and when you asked about I think you have to work on your offer first. Everybody's different. What I'm saying is my philosophy.
Yeah.
If you feel comfortable and you feel assured, you do that deep dive into your ideal client. But most people who do that first already have done the work, whether they even know it or not, and they're fully confident with who they are. Then of course we always want to think of our ideal client. We really want to focus there too. But foundational work is just that. It's the foundation of confidence that you have to then look and see what your ideal client wants and to look at your messaging in a problem awareness. So you want to talk about that agitation, what bothers them. All of those things are important. But I think prematurely, we have to figure out our own foundation and our confidence before we have the capability of doing that to a high level.
Yeah. I hear this undertone of niche, and you're so rock solid in your niche. And when you even said shiny pennies, it's not like a thing. You have this deep rooted confidence and belief in this niche. And I know so many of our listeners will sort of fight me, for lack of a better term, on niching down or niching down, whatever you want to call it. And we get this, there's a fear of I'm going to leave money on the table or I'm not going to be able to help everybody. And I'm just hearing this through line for multiple decades of knowing your niche, being an expert in your niche. And what we always say is sort of earning your right over time to go wider. And being known for one thing actually gives you the ability to be known for many things over time. And the funny thing with personal brand too, is when you build a really strong personal brand, it's easier to pivot in the future because people are there for you and your vision and mission and values rather than the product. So I'm loving this niche. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think people get confused by that though, Jess, because I always say, talk about everything, provide a one product. And so when people hear niche down, because I always say I'm the niche. I am my own niche, but that's because I did the work and you know exactly what you're going to get. So there's a play on words there, semantics. Mm-hmm. And I think what happens is new entrepreneurs hear niche down, and they don't think they can talk about their family or their friends. And I'll tell you right now, most of the people that work with me because of all the things outside of my one offer.
Yeah, like your
They
Christmas
like
decorations. They're incredible.
yeah, like in football and Tom Brady and BTS and K-pop, people think I'm quirky. And so when I say share everything, what I mean is share you, because you're going to feel really good about that. But yes, your offer comes from your zone of genius. What is it that you do in a way that most others don't do? And that really is the golden ticket of figuring out what it is that only you do in that way. So that is developing your own expertise and coming across as an authority.
So good.
Yeah.
It's so good. I want to shift gears slightly. So when I was competing with you back in the day, you took a slow and steady wins the race approach to fitness and health. You never put us on crazy crash diets. You were never pulling food from us. We weren't doing like 7,000 hours of Stairmaster. You do the same thing in business. And I believe it's one of the reasons why you still have a successful business online, and you have been online for so many years. But that's not to say that there hasn't been, pivots and ups, downs, team that you've scaled, letting team go, different iterations of the business. What would you say is the approach that you take and teach your clients to hanging around for so long? Because I feel like most people would have just quit at this point or burned out.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so true. I feel like if you're doing what you love and you're operating in your zone, there is no burnout. There's no burnout at all. But you kind of, if you know yourself, gosh, it goes back to that personal development. If you know yourself, you know when to pivot. You just know. For fitness, I didn't want to hear about brownies. I didn't want to hear about macros. Like, I got to a point where I was done. And even though I didn't start something brand new, I was, like you said, I was always doing the marketing and branding as a piece of it. I knew it was time to pivot. And I think the mark of sustainability is to know when to pivot, when you are always reinventing in a way that sticks true to your brand. The way I coach in fitness is exactly the way I coach in business. There is no change. So it's the constant, but it's a different arena in many ways. But I haven't changed. So your internal, your foundational brand doesn't have to change in your offers. But just like you, look what you did. You did your fitness program, and then you pivoted right to business. And it's a dance, it's choreography. And by the way, I hope your listeners know what an amazing competitor you were. Oh my God, Jess, like, you were amazing. But that's what it is. It's a dance. And you know when to pivot. If you want to stay around and be a sustainable brand, it's an intangible, but it's palpable at the same time.
Yeah.
I knew exactly. COVID was my decision to alter, because I knew people needed to make money. So I wanted to help people more than have them get abs. Like, honestly, that's really, it was that burning desire to say, all right, you guys, you've been dancing around and competing long enough. Let's make some money online. Let's create a brand on Instagram. You don't even have to show up for shows anymore. You can just do a photo shoot. I think the mark of a good entrepreneur in pivoting and being sustainable is to listen to the trends and follow your heart, but also just not be so stuck in your ways. And I've definitely have not been stuck in my ways.
Yeah. The business that you're running now is pretty much you, right? You do have a big team?
I have a support team, but I'm the only coach. Yeah.
Okay. And previously in fitness, you had an entire team of coaches. I mean, you had clients around the world. There were like hundreds and hundreds of us at the time. Let's talk about team for a second, because a lot of our listeners are starting to scale. Maybe they have a couple of VAs. They're thinking about scaling. I know we have a team, and it's been something we've been working on for years. And being a leader, being an influencer, being a content creator is not the same thing as leadership. Like, being a leader for a team is a very different thing. And I know I've been smacked upside the head a couple of times over the past few years. So what did it look like to scale a team? What were some of the lessons? What are some common mistakes or challenges that you see when people are scaling?
Yeah, I've made them. One of the biggest mistakes I made was I assumed that everyone on my team wanted to do exactly what I wanted to do for the good of the company. And I totally, and that came from passion and just like, how do you not want to take on 100 more girls, or how do you not want? And I did all that. I made all those mistakes. Again, the playbook, our own playbooks. We all have our own playbooks. Those were things that I really regret doing. But the idea of scaling from fitness to business was, I took a look at who stayed with me as employees, and I literally gave them what I had. I didn't sell it. I just handed it over to someone that I knew would be an ideal person to carry on tradition and to be in it for the right reasons. All of the above. That felt good to me. I didn't want to sell that membership over, although there would have been nothing wrong with that. But it felt really good to me because I still kind of am a part of it with her, not from a financial perspective.
Right.
So it was a bold decision, but I mean, I hate to say this, but I went back to my confidence. I knew that I could repeat exactly what I did when I created the fitness membership, the online program. And that's what I did. Within a year, I repeated it. And I was finally in that zone of just that. I mean, if you told me 10 years ago, would you be out of fitness? I'd say, oh my God, no.
Yeah.
But I got to that point where I was like, it's time to pivot. Knowing yourself, knowing your brand, and literally living your brand, you know when to make those changes. Just like Jess, when to create a new program.
Yeah.
You kind of hear it. It's an intangible, but it's palpable to you as a leader.
Yeah.
Leadership is, oh my God, there's so many layers to it. And when you do have a team, I think, my dad used to say, be friendly and fair. That's what you have to be as a leader, just fair.
Yeah.
And I loved my coaches. I loved my team. It was just time for me to go, and it was time for them to fly.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. And it's worked out for everybody. It's a good thing.
Yeah. For the listeners, I mean, pause the episode, rewind it, go back, take the note, screenshot it. I think one of the most important things that you said is when you decided to build something new, you went back to the beginning. And I just watched too many coaches, too many entrepreneurs go to even add another offer to their product suite, and they don't go back to the beginning. And I think it's such a huge miss. It's such a mistake. I know for us, there was a moment where the business had sort of plateaued financially, and we realized, I haven't gone back to do my niche or my I help statement or my mission or vision or our ideal client avatar. Like, I hadn't gone back to do that stuff in 2-3 years. And the second that we put some energy back into those boring foundational things that make you want to roll your eyes, it was like, oh my gosh, the clarity that came from it. So it's huge that you did that.
And you know what, with you is your why, your foundation now has evolved. So again, you have to always go back being the person you are now. Mm-hmm. Being the person you are now is not the person you started out as. Your foundation and your values, it's still there, but things have changed. It's just like when you start a diet and it works, and then you go off of it for 2 years and then you decide to go back on. Well, you're not the same body that you were when you started that first one. Yeah. So you always have to kind of go back for that reset, if you will, because it's going to be nostalgically clarifying for you, but it's also now you're coming at it with more experience.
Yeah.
And so you really address it. So for you, I think that when you did that, you had a more mature perspective. You've done so much work on that now it's radiating to another level.
Yeah. And you know your clients better at that point. You've got the feedback, you have testimonials, you know what they need, what they expect, what they don't see. You can see their blind spots. How often would you suggest someone does foundational work, whether it's for their brand, the mission, vision? Is that something you do once a year? Is it once a quarter?
I think when you feel stuck, you go back to that. So I make everybody do this thing. I call it manifesto when they first start with me. And it's a journal, and they just write about everything they want to accomplish, everything they want to do. And what's so funny is they start crying when they write it. I said, it doesn't have to make sense. Just write what you want, write how you want this to feel. How's it going to feel for you to have something that's all yours? And I always say to people, if you feel overwhelmed, go back to the manifesto because you're going to remember why you wanted to do this in the first place. So I don't have a trajectory of like, hey, every year and 9 months, go back. As an entrepreneur, you're so self-aware when you're good at this.
Yeah.
You just know, right? Like,
Yeah.
And so whenever you feel overwhelmed or stuck, you go back to that manifesto and you read it. And then you'll probably end up writing more because you just need to have that self-awareness and clarity to remind you, because everybody's got good days and everybody's got bad days. And not every launch is going to be amazing. Boy, wouldn't that be amazing? But vertical growth constantly is impossible. It's impossible to be in vertical growth 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And you learn so much from that. And that's why I always say, go back to why you did this in the first place.
You just brought me back probably 8 years when you were talking about the manifesto, because of course you had us do this too in fitness and business coaching when you were coaching me. You brought me back to probably 2015 when you had us make our yearly action boards, not our vision boards. And that is something that Mike and I have carried on as a tradition for the last 7, 8 years. We do it every single year on New Year's Eve. I've done multiple lives and podcast episodes. We've sent emails about it because over the years, it's turned into this whole 2-week experience where we're Googling images and intentionally picking what we want those things to be and putting them on the boards. And we share with each other and we explain how we're going to get there and what support we need. We order Thai food. It's like, it's the same thing every single year. And you talking about the manifesto just brought me back to that. And so I just need to publicly acknowledge you because so many of our audience members over the last, pretty much decade have taken that on as well. And that came from you. So thank you for that.
Oh, thanks, Jess. Yeah, the action board. Vision is nice, but taking action on the vision is just important.
Yeah. So as like the queen of action and getting people to move, do you have 1, 2, 3 things that you can tell our audience members that they can utilize or tap into when they're feeling stuck? Because I think we know that the only way to get out of being stuck is to move, right? And it's the hardest thing to do because we're the bottleneck. We get in our own way, limiting belief, self-doubt, busyness, excuses. How do you get people to move?
Yeah, 2 words: show up. Show up for your business, show up for your health, show up for your family, show up for what you wanted to do in the first place. This is, when we're building businesses, this is not someone mandatorily telling you have to do this. You decided to do this. Show up for your dream. And that sounds really black and white, but black and white really helps because we get really lost in the gray. Like there's no room for any of those things because it takes you further away from what you want to accomplish. And so when we look at showing up for ourselves and making that piece of time, it's self-respect, it's self-love, it's why you're doing this in the first place. So I would say to people, when you're feeling that way, remind yourself to just show up. And it doesn't have to look perfect. And it might take a long time to get it together. But consistency breeds momentum. Ooh. And if you stay consistent, I know that was good. When you stay consistent, momentum happens. I always look at, and I imagine a plane on a runway. And that's your business. It starts, the engines start fueling, and sometimes you got to sit there and wait for approval to take off. And sometimes you go really quick. Sometimes you're sitting there for an hour on the tarmac, but eventually you take off. And that's what I always imagine consistency to look like in human form is sitting on that airplane, getting ready to go, knowing you're going to take off, but we don't know when.
Yeah.
And showing up and not clouding your head with all the limiting beliefs that have no service to you whatsoever. In fact, they're pulling you back. And I just don't let people go there.
Yeah.
Because they remember their mission. And you second guessing, third guessing everything is preventing someone else from having your talent, your gift bestowed upon them.
Yeah.
Those aren't just words. Look how many lives you've changed in your empower. Look at all the lives. Look at the millions of dollars people have made, Jess. Imagine if you decided, I can't do this. Everybody has impact. Yeah. Everybody. So when you get inside your head, you remember the person who's literally waiting for you to help them.
Yeah.
And you'll never go wrong.
That's the power, though, of being in the room, whether it's free or paid, and getting into the masterclass, joining the group program, having a mentor,
Yeah.
because we're human, we're not robots. And so there are going to be days that even your why can still not be strong enough on some of those days where life is just bringing you down. So having that support system is just everything. And I know that because I learned that from you being in that room so many years ago. And I've never not had a coach now. And that was because of you when I started that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Otherwise you're crabs in a bucket, like crabs
Yeah.
in a bucket. And you have to always be so self-aware of your surroundings. And you're absolutely right. You just need that accountability and that like-minded person to remind you. And a lot of it's, I keep saying, you've got to remind yourself, but you also have to have mentorship and people who have maybe done this before remind you of the possibility.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. Just surrounding yourself with good people who are in it for the right reasons and reminding you of how valuable you are. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly why I would drive 3.5 hours to go to a Sunday session because, but truly my Monday through Friday, while I loved my job, I was a phys ed teacher. I loved kids. It was awesome. I loved my principal. I was not well liked by the teachers, and they made that very clear. And I was going to Tony Robbins events and reading personal development books, and I was doing network marketing, and I would walk in and say, I'm going to be a millionaire one day, making $50,000 a year. And my gallon jug of water and plastic bag of food. And I was not well liked. And so it was a choice to put myself in a room of like-minded people, but it also didn't even feel like a choice because I had to, because I was drowning. Right. So people talk about, oh, you quit your job. I'm like, no, I wasn't brave. I couldn't breathe. They're two different things.
Oh,
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. I could talk to you literally all day. I have so many questions. I want to be mindful of your time, and I want to make sure that everybody knows where they can find you, what you're working on, what you do coach people on. So tell us what you're working on. What are you excited about, and how could people work with you?
Oh, thanks, Jess. Well, let's see. You can find me on at Cathy Savage Official on Instagram. My website is, I don't know why I'm giggling, cathysavage.com. I think it's because I just did something funny on Instagram. I love to just provide humor. I don't always have a strategy.
I can't even mugs. Those reels are the best.
Yeah, but what's really funny is people feel really comfortable, so they DM me and they want to work with me. So I guess it does work out. Because I don't take myself so seriously. Working on just always working on with my private premier clients on branding and foundational branding. We have Her First Brand Academy, which goes into this exact foundational branding. And from there, they can fly and do whatever they want with that information. And then I just produced a toolkit for people who want to live healthy. It's kind of my nostalgic toolkit for people who want to be healthy. And it's called Proof, because I lost 25 pounds since April.
Wow.
And instead of everyone asking me, because I'm kind of out of that realm, I put something together for people called Proof, and it launches very soon. And I'm really proud of that. It's kind of my swan song out of that genre, yet still being able to provide really valuable information on health where so many women need.
Oh, I love that. We'll definitely drop all the different links and in the show notes, and of course your social media handles and everything. We're going to wrap with just a couple of rapid fire questions. You ready?
Sure.
What are you currently reading or listening to?
I'm not reading anything right now. How's that?
I love it.
But I'm listening to BTS, which is a K-pop band, and I get all my serotonin out of there. Like, I'm literally not reading anything right now.
Good.
How many times do people say that? No, they don't.
Don't.
I am looking for good books right now. I just finished a few great fiction books, but yeah, I'm not reading anything right now.
Good. I love it. You're honest. It's perfect. What did you want to be when you were a kid, when you were going to grow up?
As a kid, I wanted to be a Broadway performer. So I guess I'm doing that now. And then a broadcaster.
Okay. Best piece of advice you've been given?
Best advice. There's so much. Best advice I was ever given was that success will only taste sweet when you share it with others. And that was from my dad.
Wow. Ooh, that one's a good one. Success will only taste sweet when you share it with others. I am like the balloon popper. I tell my clients all the time, like, go for the goals. I'm cheering you on 10,000%, and I will definitely be there. But I will also tell you there's no parade. There's no confetti. Nothing changes. There's just not. And so Just celebrating it with others is huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. If I were to cut you a check for 50, yeah. If I were to cut you a check for $50,000 tomorrow that you had to invest back into the business, you could split it up, you could divide it, you could use it in one chunk. How would you allocate it?
So from a business perspective, I would be Steven Spielberg and produce a series of absolutely incredible, mind-boggling, thought-provoking videos, because everything is video, everything is digital. And I would go like Steven Spielberg, Disney epic production, because nothing excites me more than production value. I think I should have been a director.
That's awesome.
The ideas in my head, I just don't have the film crew to do it.
I love that. All right. And our last final question here. We both know that our businesses are a reflection of us and they will only grow to the extent that we grow. We also name the company Digital Business Evolution because we believe that we're always evolving and growing. So I'd love to know, what is your next personal or business evolution?
Oh my God, these are such amazing questions. And when you're a coach, you're always thinking of everybody else, right?
Yeah.
My next evolution as a coach is to maybe have a podcast next year.
Yes, do it.
I don't
know.
I know. I don't know. I'm so sick of myself, so I'm not sure. But yes, that's my next evolution as a coach, is to provide information and lessons through podcasting like you have done so beautifully well. I'll probably have to ask you for help with that.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. Hopefully in 2023, we'll get a Cathy Savage podcast up and running. I know I'll definitely be tuning in. Kath, I love you to death. I'm so grateful for you. Seriously, you have changed our lives in ways that you can't even imagine. If you love this episode, as always, please take a screenshot. Make sure you tag both Cathy and I at Cathy Savage Official. And I am Jessica DeRose. Tell us what some of your takeaways were. It's the best gift that we can give back to our podcast guests that come on and gets us getting the best guests to come in for you. And as always, cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.